That evening at Harbor Light Cafe in Seattle, Elias Rowan, a quiet single father, walked into what he believed was just a simple meeting. But when the door opened, Leora Hayes sat in her wheelchair, hands trembling, tears streaming down her face, looking at him as if he were a nightmare come to life. She frantically signed, "Leave. Please, don't pity me. I can't bear it one more time." In that instant, Elias understood. Someone had deceived them both. But what Leora said next made this strong man break down in tears. The rain had been falling steadily all afternoon, turning the streets of Seattle into rivers of reflected light. Elias Rowan stood outside Harbor Light Cafe, his jacket collar turned up against the November cold, hesitating before the glass door. At 34, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct told him to turn around and go home to his daughter. Come on, man. Just 1 hour. His best friend Jace had insisted that morning at the rehab center where they both worked. She's special. That's all I'm saying. Trust me on this. Elias worked as a physical therapy technician at Seattle Pacific Rehab Center, a job that had become his anchor after his wife Mara died 3 years ago from cancer. The work was demanding, but it gave him purpose beyond the overwhelming responsibility of raising his 7-year-old daughter Ellie alone. He had turned down every attempt at matchmaking since Mara's death. Every well-meaning friend who thought they knew what he needed better than he did himself. But Jace had been persistent, unusually so. You don't have to marry her. Just meet her. 1 coffee. That's it. So here he was, pushing open the door to a cafe he'd never visited, searching the warm interior for someone he wouldn't recognize. The place smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, soft jazz playing from speakers he couldn't see. Couples occupied most of the tables, leaning toward each other in the amber lighting. Then he saw her. Near the back corner, beside a window streaking with rain, sat a young woman in a wheelchair. She was turned slightly away, her profile caught in the glow from the street lamp outside. Dark hair fell past her shoulders, and he could see hearing aids in both ears. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers moving slightly, nervously. Elias started toward her, his heart rate picking up for reasons he couldn't name. As he approached, she must have sensed movement because she turned. And their eyes met. The transformation was immediate and devastating. Her face, which had been merely anxious, shifted to pure panic. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened in a silent cry, and her hands flew up in rapid, desperate signs. Even though Elias knew American Sign Language fluently, having been raised by a deaf mother, it took him a moment to process what she was saying through her frantic movements. No, this is wrong. You're not supposed to be. Her signs became more agitated. Please leave, please. I can't do this again. I can't. Tears began streaming down her face. Other patrons were starting to notice. Conversations dying around them. A barista looked over with concern. Elias stood frozen, his mind racing. This woman, clearly Leora Hayes if this was indeed his intended meeting, had been expecting someone different. Someone like her, perhaps. Someone in a wheelchair, someone deaf. She had been set up, just as he had. The cruelty of it hit him like a physical blow. He could leave. He should leave, probably. That would be the easiest thing for both of them. But something in her expression, beyond the panic and tears, something in the way her hands trembled as she signed "Don't pity me" over and over, made him stay rooted to the spot. His mother's face flashed in his memory. How many times had she told him about the particular pain of being treated as less than, of being seen as someone's charity case rather than a whole person? Slowly, carefully, Elias lowered himself into the chair across from her. He didn't speak. Instead, he raised his hands and signed, his movements clear and gentle. I was tricked too, and I'm not here to pity you. I'm here because someone thought they knew better than both of us what we needed. Leora's hands stopped their frantic movement. She stared at him, chest heaving with suppressed sobs. mascara tracking down her cheeks. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the condescension, the inevitable disappointment. "You know ASL," she signed. Her movements smaller now, uncertain. "My mother is deaf," he signed back. "Evelyn Rowan. Born that way. Raised me bilingual." Something shifted in Leora's expression. Not trust, not yet, but a crack in the wall of panic. She wiped at her face with shaking hands, then looked toward the door, clearly still considering flight. "One conversation," Elias signed. "Then we both leave. We owe ourselves that much, don't we? To know what actually happened here?" After a long moment, Leora nodded once, sharp and uncertain. The next 10 minutes felt longer than any hour Elias had experienced. Leora kept her gaze fixed on the table, her fingers moving in small, aborted gestures, as if she were rehearsing what to say. Finally, she looked up at him, and the raw vulnerability in her eyes made his chest ache. "My coworker set this up," she signed. "Cassandra. She's been trying to get me to date for 2 years. She promised me." Her hands faltered. "She promised me she'd found someone who would understand. Someone who wouldn't run when they saw the wheelchair." Elias nodded slowly, not interrupting. "I've been on 4 dates since my accident," Leora continued, her signs becoming more fluid as she fell into the rhythm of the language. 5 years since I fell. All 4 dates ended the same way. They see the chair, they see the hearing aids, and something changes in their faces. Sometimes they stay for 20 minutes out of politeness. Sometimes they make an excuse before they even sit down. But they all leave. They always leave." Her hands dropped to her lap. She looked out the window at the rain, her jaw tight. When she signed again, her movements were sharp with old anger and fresh pain. The worst one was Derek. We'd been messaging for 3 weeks. He seemed kind, funny. He knew about the hearing loss before we met. Said it didn't matter, but he didn't know about the wheelchair. I should have told him, but I was afraid. When he saw me at the restaurant, he literally backed away. Like I was contagious. He said, "I'm sorry, but I can't. This is too much." Elias felt his jaw clench. He forced his hands to remain steady as he signed. "That says everything about him and nothing about you, does it?" Leora's laugh was silent, but her expression was bitter. "Because after 4 times, I started wondering if maybe the problem was me. Maybe I was asking too much. Maybe expecting someone to see past all this." She gestured at herself. The wheelchair, the hearing aids, was unrealistic. "Tell me about the accident," Elias signed. It was a risk, asking her to relive it. But something told him she needed to say it, to see if he would flinch. Leora's hands were still for a long moment. Then she began. "Oregon, Mount Hood. 5 years ago in October, I was 23, engaged to a man named Andrew. We were both climbers. I was good at it, careful but fearless. That day, the weather turned faster than forecasted. We should have turned back, but Andrew wanted to prove something. I was clipped in, but the anchor point failed. I fell 40 feet. Her fingers moved precisely, clinically, as if she were describing someone else's life. I shattered both femurs, crushed 3 vertebrae, sustained a severe head injury. The trauma to my skull damaged my auditory nerves. I lost most of my hearing over the next 6 months as the nerves died. The spinal damage was permanent. The doctors said I'd never walk again." She paused, swallowed hard. "Andrew visited me in the hospital for 3 weeks. Then one day he came in, and I could see it in his face before he even spoke. He said he couldn't do it, couldn't spend his life with someone who needed this much care. Couldn't give up climbing, adventure, the life we'd planned. He left his ring on my bedside table and walked out. I haven't seen him since." Elias felt rage building in his chest, hot and protective. He had to take a breath before he could sign again. "I'm sorry that happened to you." Not sorry in a pitying way. Sorry because you deserved better. Because everyone deserves someone who stays. Leora's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different, quieter. My engagement wasn't the only thing I lost. I lost my job. I was a photographer, lots of hiking to remote locations. Lost most of my friends because I couldn't do the things we used to do together. Lost my independence for almost 2 years. Lost the sound of rain, of music, of my own voice. I had to rebuild everything from nothing. But you did, Elias signed. Rebuild. I had to, she signed back. Because the alternative was giving up. And I'm too stubborn for that. Too angry, maybe. For the first time since he'd sat down, Elias saw the ghost of a smile on her face. It was tiny. Hard-won. But it was there. Elias gestured to the barista, ordered 2 coffees without asking what Leora wanted, then immediately signed an apology. Sorry. Habit. I should have asked. Black is fine, she signed, and he saw the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. When the drinks arrived, Elias wrapped his hands around his cup, but didn't drink. He studied the dark surface. Seeing his own reflection rippled and distorted. My wife Mara died 3 years ago, he signed when he finally looked up. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. She fought for 18 months. Ellie was only 4 when Mara died. Leora's expression softened immediately, her defensive walls lowering. The last 6 months were the hardest, Elias continued. Mara was in so much pain, she couldn't take care of Ellie anymore, could barely take care of herself. I had to do everything work full-time. Care for Ellie. Care for Mara. Manage the medical appointments. The insurance battles. The constant fear. I was so tired I stopped feeling anything except the need to get through each day. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, each sign weighted with memory. The night she died, she made me promise something. She held my hand, she was so weak by then, and she said, "Don't stop living. Find someone who makes you laugh again. Give Ellie a mother." I promised because she was dying, and I would have promised her anything. But after she was gone, that promise felt like a betrayal. Leora nodded, understanding in her eyes. Everyone has advice, Elias signed, frustration creeping into his movements. My mother, my friends, my co-workers. They all think they know what's best for me. You need to move on. You can't raise Ellie alone. Mara wouldn't want you to be alone. As if grief has an expiration date. As if I could just decide one day that I'm done missing her and everything would be fine. They don't understand that grief isn't something you finish, Leora signed. It's something you learn to carry. Exactly, Elias signed, feeling something unlock in his chest. Jace has been pushing me to date for over a year. He means well, but he doesn't get it. I'm not lonely because I'm single. I'm lonely because the person who knew me best is gone. No first date is going to fix that. So why did you come tonight? Leora asked. Elias laughed, the sound rough. He signed. Because Jace was so insistent, I thought maybe he'd actually found someone who understood. Someone who wasn't expecting me to be healed and ready. I thought maybe he'd found someone who was just as tired of being managed and matched and fixed. Sounds familiar, Leora signed, and this time her smile was real, small but genuine. They sat in silence for a moment. The cafe noise swirling around them, separate from them. Elias felt something he hadn't expected. Recognition. This woman across from him, with her walls and her wounds and her hard-won strength, understood something fundamental that no one else in his life seemed to grasp. I'm not trying to replace Mara, he signed. I don't think that's even possible. She was part of my life, and she always will be. But maybe, he paused, considering, maybe I'm tired of everyone else deciding what I need. Maybe I'd like to make my own choices again. I know that feeling, Leora signed. Everyone wants to help, but sometimes help feels like being told you're not capable of knowing your own mind. Yes, Elias signed emphatically. Exactly that. They looked at each other across the small table. Two people who had been manipulated into meeting, who had every reason to walk away, but who were finding something unexpected in their forced proximity. Truth, understanding, the rare gift of being seen. The initial panic had dissolved, replaced by something more complex and infinitely more interesting. Leora straightened slightly in her wheelchair, and Elias noticed details he'd missed before. The silver rings on her fingers, the small paint stain on the cuff of her sweater, the sharp intelligence in her dark eyes. "What do you do?" Elias signed. "For work, I mean. Graphic design." Leora signed back. "Freelance, mostly. I work from home, which used to feel like a limitation but now feels like freedom. I design book covers, marketing materials, website graphics. The clients don't see me, don't know about the chair or the hearing loss. They just see my work." "Do you want them to know?" Elias asked. Leora tilted her head, considering. "Sometimes. Other times I like having one part of my life where I'm just Leora the designer, not Leora the girl who survived but has complications." "Does that make sense?" "Complete sense," Elias signed. "At work, I'm Elias, the PT tech. At home, I'm Ellie's dad. Both are true, but neither is the whole story." "Tell me about Ellie," Leora signed, and Elias felt his face soften automatically. "She's 7, first grade. She loves dinosaurs, hates broccoli, and asks approximately 1 million questions per day. She looks like Mara, same blonde curls, same stubborn chin, but her personality is all her own. She's brave in ways I never was at her age." "Does she remember her mother?" "Some," Elias signed. "She remembers feelings more than specifics. She remembers being held, being read to, feeling safe. The details get fuzzier every year, which kills me. I show her photos, tell her stories, but I know it's not the same as remembering." "You're keeping Mara alive for her," Leora signed. "That's a gift." They talked for another hour. Elias described the challenges of single parenthood, the guilt of never feeling like he was doing enough, the exhaustion that had become his baseline. Leora shared her journey toward independence, learning to navigate a world designed for standing people. The frustration of being simultaneously invisible and hypervisible. "People either stare or determinedly don't look at me," she signed. "Both feel dehumanizing in different ways." "My mother says the same thing," Elias signed. "She's had people literally snap their fingers in front of her face to get her attention, like she's a dog, or they talk to whoever is standing next to her, asking them to translate, as if she's not right there." "Exactly," Leora signed, her movements sharp with recognition. "I hate when people talk to my friends about me while I'm sitting right there. Can she handle stairs? Does she need help cutting her food? As if I'm not a person who can answer for myself." "My mother would like you," Elias signed. "You think so?" "I know so. She has a radar for people who get it." Leora's expression changed, something vulnerable crossing her face. "I haven't had a conversation this honest in years. Usually people are performing at me, you know? Being inspirational or tragic or whatever role they've assigned me. But you're just talking to me like I'm a person." "You are a person," Elias signed simply. "Everything else is just details." By the time they finally stood to leave, the cafe had emptied significantly. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean and gleaming. Elias helped Leora with her coat, not because she couldn't do it herself, but because it felt natural, the kind of small kindness between equals. "Can I ask you something?" Elias signed as they moved toward the door. "Of course. Would you want to do this again? Not because someone set us up, but because we choose to." Leora looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she smiled, small but real. "Yes, I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, the transaction of modern connection, as Elias held the door for her and watched her navigate her chair through the opening with practiced ease. He felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Their second meeting was at the Seattle Art Museum on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. Elias had arranged his schedule to get off work early, something he rarely did. They moved through the galleries slowly. Leora's wheelchair, allowing her to view the art from a different perspective than most visitors. In front of a massive abstract painting, all blues and silvers like frozen water, Leora signed, "This is how my world sounds now, like looking at music instead of hearing it. Colors and shapes that move but don't make noise." Elias stood beside her, looking at the painting with new eyes. "Is it lonely?" "Sometimes," she signed. "But sometimes, it's peaceful. I don't miss the harsh sounds. Traffic, construction, people yelling. I miss specific things. Rain on a roof, my mother's laugh, the ocean. Can you hear anything with the hearing aids?" "Some. Loud noises mostly, but distorted. They help me navigate the world better. Let me know when someone is approaching, or if there's an alarm. But conversation?" She shook her head. "This is better." She gestured to the space between them where their signs flowed. They grabbed coffee afterward at a quiet place Leora knew, where the staff recognized her and brought her order, without her having to shout over counter noise. Elias told her about his work at the rehab center, about the patients who struggled and the ones who thrived. "Do you see yourself in them?" Leora sighed. "The patients?" "Sometimes," Elias admitted. "I see people trying to rebuild their lives after loss. It's not the same as losing a spouse, but the process is similar. Grief, anger, acceptance, moving forward." "Have you moved forward?" she asked gently. Elias considered this. "I've moved. Whether it's forward or just sideways, I'm not sure yet." Their third meeting was at Green Lake Park, where they walked Leora in her chair, Elias beside her around the water's edge. Families played in the grass. Dogs chased balls. Joggers passed in rhythmic waves. It was normalcy itself, and somehow that made it perfect. "Tell me something true," Leora signed as they paused to watch ducks arguing over breadcrumbs. "Like what?" "Something you don't usually tell people." Elias thought for a moment. "Sometimes I resent Ellie. Not her specifically, but the responsibility. I love her more than anything, but there are days when I fantasize about just getting in my car and driving until I hit the ocean. Just being alone, being nobody's father or son or employee, just being Elias, whoever that is." Leora nodded slowly. "That's honest, and probably healthier than pretending you're superhuman." "Your turn," Elias signed. "Sometimes I'm grateful for the accident," Leora signed, her movements careful. "Not for the pain or the loss, but because it showed me who I really was underneath all the performance. I was so busy being what other people wanted: the cool girlfriend, the adventurous photographer, the fun friend, that I didn't know who I was when all that was stripped away. The accident forced me to find out." "And who are you?" Elias asked. Leora smiled. "Still figuring that out. But I know I'm stronger than I thought. More stubborn. Less willing to settle for people who don't see me." They met twice more over the next 2 weeks. At a bookstore where Leora showed him her favorite graphic novels, explaining the visual storytelling in ways that made him see the art form differently. At a restaurant where they shared pad thai and spring rolls, Elias fumbling with chopsticks, while Leora signed mockingly about his lack of coordination. The chemistry between them grew with each meeting, not the explosive passion of new romance, but something quieter and more sustainable. They laughed easily now, teased each other, fell into comfortable silences that didn't need filling. But there was also caution. Both of them had been hurt enough to know that attraction wasn't the same as safety, that connection could be severed by 1,000 different incompatibilities. They were testing the waters, feeling for the bottom, making sure the ground would hold. "Dad, are you dating someone?" Ellie asked one morning over cereal, her tone accusatory in the way only a 7-year-old could manage. Elias nearly choked on his coffee. "What makes you ask that? You're smiling at your phone. You never smile at your phone. And you're wearing the blue shirt, which is your nice shirt." Elias looked down at himself, caught. I've been seeing someone, yes. As a friend. Is it a girlfriend friend or just a friend? Somewhere in between, maybe. Ellie processed this, her face serious. Is she nice? Very nice. Her name is Leora. Can I meet her? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Introducing Ellie to someone he was dating felt enormous, a step that couldn't be walked back. But he'd been thinking about it, and maybe the best way to know if this could work was to see how Leora and Ellie fit together. Would you like to? Elias asked carefully. Ellie nodded, already returning to her cereal. Yeah. I want to make sure she's good enough for you. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, Elias and Ellie met Leora at the Pacific Science Center. Elias had prepared Ellie carefully, explaining about the wheelchair and the hearing aids, making sure she understood that Leora communicated differently. So she talks with her hands like Grandma Evelyn? Ellie had asked. Exactly like that. Cool. Can you teach me more signs? I only know like 5. When they arrived, Leora was waiting near the entrance, wrapped in a green scarf that brought out the color in her eyes. She looked nervous, her hands fidgeting in her lap until she saw them approaching. Elias signed introductions, and Ellie, to his proud surprise, attempted a careful, if clumsy, "Nice to meet you" in ASL that she'd clearly been practicing. Leora's face lit up. She signed back slowly, making sure Ellie could follow. "Nice to meet you too, Ellie. Your dad has told me wonderful things about you." They spent the morning exploring exhibits. Ellie was fascinated by everything: the butterfly house, the planetarium, the hands-on physics demonstrations. But she kept circling back to Leora, asking questions with the refreshing directness of childhood. Does the wheelchair go fast? Can you hear me at all or just nothing? Does it hurt, being like this? Elias cringed internally at each question, but Leora answered them all with patient honesty. The chair can go pretty fast if I need it to. Want to see? She did a quick spin that made Ellie giggle. I can hear very loud sounds, but they sound fuzzy, like listening underwater. That's why I use sign language, it's clearer. It used to hurt a lot. Now it only hurts sometimes, but I've gotten used to it. At the butterfly house, Ellie insisted on learning the sign for butterfly and practiced it over and over until she got it right. When a large blue morpho landed on Leora's shoulder, Ellie's eyes went wide with wonder. And she very gently signed beautiful, the way Leora had taught her. During lunch, Ellie sat between them, animatedly telling Leora about her favorite dinosaurs and how she wanted to be a paleontologist when she grew up. Leora listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was truly paying attention. Your daughter is remarkable, Leora signed to Elias when Ellie went to throw away their trash. She likes you, Elias signed back. I can tell. How? She's being herself. She only does that with people she trusts. When they said goodbye in the parking lot, Ellie hugged Leora without prompting, a quick squeeze before running back to Elias's car. In the rearview mirror as they drove away, Elias could see Leora wiping at her eyes. That night, tucking Ellie into bed, his daughter looked up at him with her mother's eyes and said, I like Leora, Dad. She's nice. And she doesn't treat me like I'm a baby. I'm glad, Elias said, smoothing her hair. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. I care about her very much. But do you love her like you loved Mom? Elias took a breath. No. But that doesn't mean it's less real. Love doesn't always look the same way twice. Ellie considered this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult complexities. Okay. That makes sense. Can we see her again soon? I think we can arrange that. As he turned off her light and closed the door, Elias felt something settle in his chest. Whatever this was becoming with Leora, his daughter had just given her blessing. That felt like permission to stop holding back. 2 weeks later, Elias invited Leora to Sunday dinner at his mother's house. Evelyn Rowan lived in a small craftsman in Ballard, her home filled with plants and books and the kind of comfortable clutter that spoke of a life well lived. Elias had warned Leora that his mother could be intense, that she had strong opinions and wasn't shy about sharing them. But when Evelyn opened the door and saw Leora, Her face transformed, with a joy that needed no translation. The three of them spent the evening in the kitchen, cooking together a dance of hands and signs and shared understanding. Evelyn made her signature lasagna while teaching Leora family signs that weren't part of standard ASL, the personal language that families create over years of living together. He was a stubborn child. Evelyn signed about Elias, her movements quick and teasing, always insisted on doing everything himself, even when he needed help. "He's still like that," Leora signed back, and both women laughed silently while Elias protested. Over dinner, Evelyn asked Leora direct questions about her life, her work, her accident, not with pity, but with the matter-of-fact curiosity of someone who had spent her own life navigating a world that wasn't built for her. "People think disability makes you fragile," Evelyn signed. "But really it makes you understand how strong you are." "Yes," Leora signed emphatically. "Exactly that." Watching them together, Elias felt a tightness in his chest that he recognized as happiness. The two most important women in his life, understanding each other in a way he could facilitate but never fully share. There was something profound about it, something that felt like coming home. After dinner, while Elias washed dishes, Evelyn and Leora sat in the living room. Through the doorway, Elias could see them signing to each other, their conversation flowing with an ease that usually took years to develop. When he brought them tea, Evelyn looked up at him with an expression he hadn't seen since before Mara died. Approval, hope. Later, driving Leora home, she was quiet, looking out the window at the passing streetlights. "What are you thinking?" Elias signed when they stopped at a red light. "I'm thinking that I didn't realize how much I missed having family," Leora signed. "My parents moved to Arizona after the accident. They couldn't handle watching me struggle. Your mother made me feel like I belonged in a way I haven't felt in years. She loved you," Elias signed. "I could tell." "How?" "She used her special signs with you. She only does that with people she considers family." Leora turned to look at him, her eyes bright in the dashboard light. "Is that what this is becoming? Family?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "I think it might be." 3 months into their relationship, Elias made a decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. He asked Leora if she would visit him at work, at Seattle Pacific Rehab Center, where he spent his days helping people rebuild their lives after injury or illness. "Are you sure?" Leora signed when he asked. "That's your space. You don't have to bring me into it." "I want to," Elias signed. "You're a big part of my life now. I want you to see all of it." What he didn't say, what he could barely admit to himself, was that he needed to know if she could handle being there. The rehab center was where she'd been treated 5 years ago, where she'd learned to use a wheelchair, where Andrew had abandoned her. If they were going to move forward, she needed to face that place again, and he needed to see if the ghosts were too strong. The day Leora arrived, Elias met her in the parking lot. She sat in her car for a long moment before transferring to her wheelchair, and he could see her hands shaking as she locked her doors. "We can leave," he signed. "Right now, if this is too much." "No," she signed firmly. "I need to do this." They entered through the main doors, and Elias watched Leora's face as she took in the familiar halls. The smell of antiseptic and hope, the sounds of people working hard to recover pieces of themselves. Her expression was controlled, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. He introduced her to his coworkers, showed her the therapy rooms where he worked, the gym where patients pushed through exercises that hurt but healed. Some of his colleagues recognized Leora's name from his conversations, and they greeted her warmly. Then they turned a corner, and Leora stopped abruptly. They were in the long hallway outside the inpatient ward, the corridor lined with windows that looked out over Seattle's skyline. Leora stared at a spot near the window, her breathing quickening. "This is where he left me," she signed, her movements sharp and jagged. "I was waiting here for him to pick me up for a follow-up appointment. He was late, and I kept checking my phone. Then he sent a text. 'I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Don't contact me.' That's it. 5 years together. And that's how it ended." Elias moved to stand beside her, not touching, just present. "I sat here for 2 hours," Leora continued, her signs becoming more agitated. I couldn't believe he wasn't coming. I kept thinking there was a mistake, that he'd show up and explain. But he didn't. Eventually, a nurse found me crying and helped me get a cab home. She turned to face Elias fully, tears streaming down her face now. If you're here because you pity me, if you're with me because I'm some kind of project or redemption story, tell me now. Because I can't survive another Andrew. I can't build myself up just to be left again. I won't. The words, signed with shaking hands, landed like blows. Elias felt his own eyes burning, felt his throat tighten with emotion he'd been holding back for months. Leora, he signed, moving closer. Look at me. She did, her face a mask of pain and defiance. I'm not Andrew. Elias signed slowly, clearly. I'm not here because you need saving. I don't want to fix you or change you. I'm here because you make me laugh, because you challenge me. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be more than just Ellie's dad or Mara's widower. You remind me that I'm still a person with desires and dreams, and the capacity for connection. His hands moved faster now, the signs flowing with an urgency that surprised him. You're not a project. You're not a responsibility. You're the woman I want to talk to at the end of a long day. You're the person whose opinion I value. You're someone who understands loss and strength in ways most people never will. And yes, you use a wheelchair and you can't hear me speak. But that's just part of who you are. It's not all of you. And it's not the reason I'm here. Leora's hands were pressed to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. I can't promise I won't hurt you, Elias signed. I can't promise this will work perfectly. But I can promise that I'm here because I choose to be. Not out of pity or obligation, but because I want to be. Every day, I choose you. For a long moment, they stood in that hallway where she'd been broken years before, looking at each other with complete honesty. Then Leora moved forward, wrapping her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Elias held her, feeling her shoulders shake, feeling his own tears finally falling. I choose you too, she signed against his chest when she finally pulled back. I'm scared. But I choose you too. They kissed there in the hallway, soft and tentative and full of promise. When they broke apart, Leora looked around the space that had haunted her for so long. It's different now, she signed. This place, it doesn't hurt the same way. Good, Elias signed. It should be a place of healing, not abandonment. As they walked back to the entrance together, something had shifted between them. They'd named their fears and chosen each other anyway. That felt like the foundation for something lasting. That evening, after dropping Leora at her apartment, Elias sat in his car for a long time, thinking. The conversation at the rehab center had cracked something open in him. Exposed feelings he'd been carefully avoiding naming. He was in love with her. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. He hadn't been in love since Mara. Hadn't wanted to be. Love meant vulnerability, risk, the possibility of devastating loss. But it also meant joy, connection, the expansion of his life beyond mere survival. The next day, he asked Leora to dinner, just the two of them, at a quiet restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. She arrived wearing a dark blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, and Elias's breath caught at the sight of her. Over dinner, they talked about small things work, Ellie's latest school project, a book Leora was reading. But the larger conversation hummed beneath it all. Unspoken, but present. Finally, over dessert, Elias reached across the table and took her hand. She looked up, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. I need to tell you something, he signed with his free hand, awkward but determined. What? Leora signed back, worry creeping into her expression. I love you, Elias signed. Not as a friend, not as someone I'm casually dating. I'm in love with you, Leora Hayes. I love your strength, your honesty, your dark sense of humor. I love how you are with Ellie. How you are with my mother. I love that you call me out when I'm being stubborn, and that you understand my grief without trying to fix it. Leora's eyes were wide, her hand tightening in his. "I know we've only known each other a few months," Elias continued. "I know it's fast, but I also know that when Mara died, I thought I'd never feel this way again. I thought that part of my life was over. You've shown me that wasn't true. You've shown me that my heart is bigger than I thought, that there's room for both honoring who I lost and building something new with you." Tears were streaming down Leora's face now, her free hand moving to sign, but Elias gently caught it. "Let me finish," he signed, releasing her hand so she could see. "I'm not comparing you to Mara. You're not a replacement. You're something entirely new and precious, and yours. What I feel for you is different than what I felt for her, but it's no less real, and I need you to know that I see you completely. The chair, the hearing loss, the scars from what you survived, I see all of it. And I love all of it. Because it's all you." Leora was openly crying now, her hands shaking as she signed back. "I love you too. God, I love you too. I've been so afraid to say it. So afraid that if I admitted how much I care, you'd disappear like everyone else. But you didn't. You stayed." "I stayed," Elias confirmed. "And I'm going to keep staying." They leaned across the table, kissing over the remnants of their dessert, both of them laughing through their tears. Around them, the restaurant continued its evening rhythm, but in their bubble, everything had shifted and settled into place. "Take me home," Leora signed when they finally pulled apart. "Your home or mine?" Elias signed back. "Yours," she signed. "I want to fall asleep with you." They drove back to his house, and for the first time, Leora stayed the night. They lay together in Elias's bed, Leora's wheelchair folded beside the dresser. The house quiet around them. They talked in the darkness, hands finding each other, signing against skin, sharing the kind of vulnerable conversations that only happen in the small hours. "What do you want?" Leora signed. "For the future, I mean." "I want this," Elias signed. "You, me, Ellie. I want Sunday dinners with my mom, where everyone signs and laughs. I want to wake up next to you. I want to build something that feels like family again." "I want that too," Leora signed. "I didn't think I could have it. After everything, I thought maybe I'd lost my chance at that kind of life." "You didn't," Elias signed, pulling her closer. "You just hadn't found the right person yet." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Elias woke in the morning to find Leora still there, her hand resting on his chest, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. 3 months later, on a brilliant April afternoon, Elias asked Leora to meet him at Washington Park Arboretum. She arrived to find him waiting near the Azalea Way, where thousands of flowers bloomed in cascades of pink and white and red. "What's this about?" Leora signed, looking around suspiciously. "Take a walk with me?" Elias signed back. They moved through the gardens, Leora's wheelchair navigating the paved paths easily. Elias pointed out different flowers, stalling, his heart racing with nerves. Then, as they rounded a corner, Leora stopped. There, in a small clearing surrounded by blooming rhododendrons, stood Ellie and Evelyn. Ellie was wearing her favorite dress, holding a small box, practically vibrating with excitement. Evelyn stood behind her, smiling. "What's going on?" Leora signed, looking between them in confusion. Elias moved to stand in front of her, then lowered himself to one knee. Leora's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes going wide. "Leora Hayes," Elias signed, his movements careful and clear. "5 months ago, I walked into a cafe expecting nothing and found everything. You've taught me that life doesn't end with loss. That healing doesn't mean forgetting. That love can look different the second time and still be real." Ellie ran forward, opening the box to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond on a silver band. "I'm not promising you a perfect life," Elias continued signing. "We'll have hard days. We'll disagree. We'll struggle sometimes. But I am promising you that I'll show up. I'll listen. I'll choose you every day, the way you've taught me to choose myself again." Behind him, Evelyn was crying, signing encouragement. "Will you marry me?" Elias signed. "Will you let me spend my life loving you exactly as you are?" Leora was sobbing, her hands shaking too much to sign. Instead, she nodded frantically, then finally managed to sign, "Yes, yes, yes," over and over. Elias slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. Ellie rushed over, hugging both of them, and Evelyn joined the embrace. All four of them tangled together in the spring garden. When they finally pulled apart, Leora signed to Elias, "Thank you for not leaving that cafe. Thank you for staying when I was at my worst. Thank you for letting me," Elias signed back. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stubborn single dad who didn't know what he was missing." Ellie tugged on Leora's sleeve, signing carefully. "Does this mean you'll be my mom?" Leora looked at the little girl, this fierce, smart, loving child who had welcomed her so completely. She signed back, "If you'll have me." "Yes," Ellie signed, then threw her arms around Leora's neck. As they stood there in the garden, surrounded by flowers and sunlight and the people they loved, Elias felt something he'd thought he'd never feel again. Complete, not because Leora fixed him or filled a void, but because she'd helped him remember that he was more than his grief, more than his responsibilities, more than his past. She'd reminded him that he deserved joy, connection, and the messy, beautiful work of building a life with someone who truly saw him. They stayed in the garden until the sun began to set, planning a future that felt both thrilling and solid. A future built not on pity or obligation, but on choice, on respect, on love that had been tested and found strong enough to hold. As they prepared to leave, Leora signed one more thing to Elias. "I choose you too. Every day. From this day forward." And in that moment, surrounded by family, Elias knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as damaged people trying to fix each other, but as whole people choosing to build something new. That was worth everything.